Yeah, they're quite clear, those ones.
Yeah. We get to here, and you see these ones. Now, they look all nice and crystally, don't they?
Yeah.
But look closer. These are all stuff that's been added.
Why would these be tampered with?
Adding weight is the most common thing.
Yeah.
Now, the worst scenario I've seen is where someone has been walking into the plant's growing areas while the plant is still growing and sprinkling crushed glass, and they're emptying it on the bud. The bud grows around it and the weight is there. There are no health warnings going out about it. This is the length and breadth of the country, this stuff. It is coming in by the ton. The only way of being sure about your own personal health, if you're smoking cannabis, is to grow your own.
I can see Phil is passionate about his weed, but even with pure homegrown stuff, there still seems to be a question mark over how safe it is for some users.
Alan Johnson dismissed Professor Nutt last week after he said cannabis was less harmful than alcohol and cigarettes, and criticised the decision of ministers last year to upgrade the drug to Class B.
If top scientists and politicians can't agree what the dangers of cannabis are, no wonder I'm confused. I've met people who say they can lead a normal life while smoking cannabis, but for others, it can send their lives totally out of control.
That's Guy on his 18th birthday.
Kate Summers first noticed her son Guy was smoking cannabis when he was 16.
I didn't encourage it, but I just thought it was another phase that he was going through. I thought, well, you know, at least he's here and he's in his bedroom, he's not wandering the streets with a bottle of vodka in his hand or something. Thought it was relatively safe. 9 times out of 10, they were upstairs in the bedroom, him and his mates, with guitars, writing songs, smoking. I didn't realise at the time how much he was smoking, but yeah, it was obviously smoking morning till night then.
He was changing very quickly, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Wasn't the happy-go-lucky boy that was my older brother. It was a completely different person, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was on the night of Guy's 17th birthday party that the family realised how erratic his behaviour had become.
Instead of the usual devastation, house absolutely wrecked, Guy was sat in the corner, having completely lost his rag with somebody who had done something, started shouting and get everybody out, and actually frightened his friends to death. I sat up with him all that night talking, and it was obvious that he was really quite unwell by that stage. Very paranoid, depressive, suicidal, frightened because he didn't know why he felt like that. And then the next day I took him to the GP, who referred him to the psychiatrist, and everything went from there, really.
I thought there was more to it, not just the cannabis. It was weird that something so little could have such a big effect on someone's life.
Psychiatrists recommended Guy stop smoking cannabis, which he largely managed to do, although there was little improvement in his health.
It's very frightening to see your son like that. Any child love you like that. It's very frightening. You don't know what to do.
Over 18 months, the family's life had become completely dominated by Guy's illness.
I'd taken him to the doctors in the morning. He'd got a prescription for some medication, which I dropped off at the chemist's and said to him, well, I'll bring them home later when I come home because you don't need them now, do you? And he didn't need them then. Went back to work, and I was only back at work for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I thought, I don't know, I'll go and get his tablets now, I'm not quite sure. And just, there was something, I don't know, for whatever reason, I went and picked up his medication and decided to drop it in, and came in, and he was in his bedroom hanging from his bed frame. So he had a bunk bed with a settee underneath it behind, and he was hanging from there.
I'm not going to try and be like, oh, this happened to my brother, you shouldn't smoke it, no one should ever smoke it, because it's their own free will if they want to smoke it, but no one really, like, believes it until you've had someone close to you or someone that you've known for it to happen to, and it's just really weird that, like, before we never heard of any warnings, or anyone that I know had ever heard of a warning with cannabis.
This can happen to some people. It doesn't happen to everybody, we know that, but it could happen and it can happen. you learn to live with it. You don't get over it. You just learn to live with it, as you have to. And I had to keep going for my other 2 children.
The verdict at Guy's inquest said he had suffered a drug-induced psychosis. It's frightening to think that cannabis is being linked to such serious mental health problems. I want to find out more about what's being done to investigate the effects cannabis has on the brain. Psychiatrist Dr. Oliver Howes is a leading researcher in this field and is halfway through a major study investigating why some people might experience psychosis if they smoke cannabis.
If somebody smokes a lot of cannabis, how do we know, can we prove that that's linked to, schizophrenia and psychosis in general?
It's very hard to prove a link, absolutely. What we do have is evidence that shows that people that have ever smoked cannabis have an increased risk of going on later on to develop psychotic symptoms, including and psychotic illnesses as well, including schizophrenia. And there's an indication from one study that smoking early, early in adolescence, before the age of 16, might particularly increase your risk of going on to have psychotic-like symptoms. But that really is something that we need to test further in other studies.
So could you explain why, the man or the female on the street that smokes cannabis all the time says, I can lead a perfectly normal life, I can smoke when I get up in the morning, when I get home from work, and I'm fine. And then on the other hand, there's somebody that, smokes probably the same amount but can't do all of those things. Why that is?
Well, I guess cannabis is similar in that respect to alcohol, and we all see some people that seem to be more susceptible to the effects of alcohol than others. And underlying that is probably differences in their biology.
We all have receptors in the brain that are stimulated if we smoke cannabis. Dr. Howe's study is trying to find out if a person that has a large number of these receptors is more likely to experience psychotic symptoms after cannabis use. This study is one of several currently being carried out by scientists trying to nail down exactly how cannabis works.
Cannabis has been around for millennia and is one of the most widely used illicit substances in the world, but we know remarkably little about how it affects our brains in practice.
It's scary how little we know about the dangerous effects cannabis could have on the brain. What's more worrying is that the criminals growing cannabis couldn't care less about the possible dangers. There are no checks on how strong the cannabis they produce is, or what contaminants they might put into the drugs sold on the street. I've had a call from the drug squad in Bristol asking me to come down one last time to see a big factory they'd raided that morning.
All right, fellas. So this is pretty big.
Yeah, it's a proper professional setup.
Wow, you can really smell the difference as soon as you walk in. Wow.
This is the main room.
That is a lot of cannabis.
There's a lot of cannabis there, yeah. I mean, they're toppling over a bit because some of them, they are ready to go right now, like, really.
So you caught this guy, like, just in perfect time, basically?
It's ideal scenario, isn't it? Because someone was just envisaging selling this on the street and now, it's going to go in the incinerator.
There's just so much of it. Wow. It really is something. That's just massive. Look at the size of that. Huge. I never thought we were going to get to see something like this on this scale.
Whoever's done this has done a really good job. They're the biggest that we probably ever seized. The amount of flowering head that each plant has produced, right the way down to the roots. And I mean, just that bit there, it's like a fiver's worth of cannabis just there.
Even the police seem impressed with this elaborate setup. From the extractor fans, to the huge vats of plant nutrients, to the machine that dries the bud, this is the ultimate one-stop shop for cannabis production. There's even a money counter to keep track of all the cash made from the crops.
So this is a big operation they had here.
Yeah, this is a proper setup. Yeah, this is one of the biggest we've found for some time, and one of the most professional. Someone's gone to an awful lot of expense and effort to get this up and running. There's just over 350 cannabis plants here at the moment. Potentially, if everything yields as those plants have yielded, and there's nothing to suggest it wouldn't, that's probably £250,000 worth of it.
Wow. So money does grow on trees after.
I'd love to have helped the guys tidy up, but only police professionals are allowed, so that each plant seized can be carefully accounted for. Within 2 hours, all that's left of the cannabis factory is a load of empty plant pots, some dead leaves, and an almighty mess for the landlord to clear up. As the guys were finishing up there, they were pulling down the shutters and kind of locking up. And once they did that, you'd never ever know what was going on behind closed doors. It's really, really weird. It's just like any other industrial street. There's a couple of warehouses around here, businesses and whatnot. And you just don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Behind those shutters, there could be another one just sitting across the street over there. You never ever know. It's amazing. What I've learned over the past few weeks is the cannabis scene in the UK is pretty confusing. Some people clearly have major problems smoking the drug, whilst others see it as harmless fun. And some people grow the plant for a hobby, while serious organised criminals are making huge sums from their crops. What I do know is the cannabis grow boom shows no sign of slowing down, and secret cannabis farms could be cropping up in a street near you.
Annie from BBC Three's Being Human stars in the drama we've got next, Material Girl.